Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. Here, this is the spot where the conversation is pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. Welcome home, Brains. There's only one requirement to hang out on the edge, is that you open your big brain and close your small mind. Did you bring your thinking caps? It's time to put them on, because the conversation starts now. Here we go. Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. How you doing today? Wow. Today we have a full container. Absolutely. We have resistance, we have loss, we have stability, we have courage, we have books, we have friendship, we have love, and we've got the beautiful Hawaii. We have Kimberly Cano. We're going to talk about all of the... Did I say it wrong?
Did you hear the rooster?
I didn't hear the rooster.
You didn't hear the rooster? Okay, that's why I was laughing.
I like the rooster because we got a rooster right over the hill, and I know that it's morning and then it's going to be a good day, and then I'm going to eat when I hear the rooster. And you know, in Hawaii, there's a whole lot of chickens. A whole lot of I mean, they walk in the street like
They own the joint.
they do.
They do own the joint.
I was like, people will never be hungry in Hawaii. I was just there in December and I was looking, I was like, there's chickens everywhere. We need them here because the damn eggs in California is $12 a dozen. Who does that?
I
So
know.
Brace, let me give you a little information about Kimberly because I'm telling you, I can't even tell all this story. You wouldn't even believe it. But she is a very strong woman. Okay, I want you to know that. Okay, she has experienced deep sexual assault, recovering from drug abuse. She went to prison. She's the mother of four. She's the author of books. She is an avid beachgoer and lover there in Hawaii. Not just one book, many books. She's got a story to tell. And I don't know how we're going to get it all in one interview, but I want you to know that this is not about judgment. This is about overcoming and adapting and getting through. You know, they always say that you don't know how it feels until you walked a mile in somebody else's shoes.
Yeah,
Baby,
amen.
she done walked from stilettos to combat boots. Okay. And these size 9.5s could not get in those, okay? Because it's a story to tell. So thank you so much for being with me, Kimberly. I know that you just experienced a transition in your life right before this interview, and I thank you for still, again, doing what you do, show resilience, and you showed up, and me and my brains appreciate it. We really, really do. So tell my brains a little bit about you that I haven't already shared.
I thank you so much, first of all, mahalo, as we say in Hawaii, for having mahalo nui laws. Thank you very much for having me on the show. And as I had mentioned before we started the podcast or the recording, that I had planned to be all, dolled up and made up like you and whatever. But, a huge part of my story is being authentic, being my authentic self and practicing the resilience and the maneuvering and all the little tips and tricks I had to teach myself. 11 years on the street, navigating voluntarily. No one put me out there. I did it to myself. And right now, sitting here, I've been practicing everything I've learned over the course of the years in mindset training to overcome a very close death in our family. So without further ado, to myself and to you and the brains, I am Kimberly Cano, age 55. I seem taller than I am. I'm 5'2".
Really?
And
Then you sitting down. You're a little petite thing.
I'm a midget, a hobbit, so my family, refers to me. And yes, absolutely. I've been through quite a bit in my life, and I'm just grateful right now that everything is happening in the succession and order that it did. And it only happens when you're blessed. And I'm originally from Hawaii. I'm a full-time resident of Colorado. And you found me on Facebook. I have a moderate following. I wouldn't say I have a huge one, but I have a presence for sure. And my professional career dates back to the year around 2000 when I put myself through college after living in rehab for 3.5 years.
Mm.
So it was the streets for 11 years, from a teenager until 26. It was jail, prison for 6 months, and then supervised release to a program full time without leaving and being able to be with my family in any unsupervised fashion for longer than an hour, for only months here and there, for a day here and there between the time in the program, and a year and a half of that was voluntary. And during the time I was in the program, I lost my father, one of my fathers, who I thought was my father, my only father. We'll get to that later on another interview. We'll keep going here. And I uh, I graduated from that program and I put myself through college. And that was at age 30. And so I'd say that in this last 25 years has been pretty magical to see myself go from having to teach everything, learn everything, relearn things that I thought I wouldn't learn. I didn't get my driver's license until I was in my mid 20s because I drove without a license for, or later 20s rather, for all those years. So I'm here today to express that even, I mean, like death. We had a death. My son's father passed last night after a grueling battle with cancer and heart disease from July 2023. And we have been closely with him. And I sit here with you and I practice what I learned. That's really what Wise Marie in the books and Natasha Brune is all about, April.
And and tell them what an incredible surfer he was. Now, Brains, you know me in the water. Okay, I'm not a big fan of the water. I'll sit there on the shore and watch you, or I float on a cruise ship. But other than that, I don't. I've almost drowned 3 times. But
Oh,
her family are incredible professional surfers there in Hawaii. I was just there in December, and I was in awe.
my son found you in that picture. He because he
Did he?
wanted to know the son. Yeah, he my son gave me permission to talk about it because he was actually okay with it because he looked you up and said, "Hey, she's pretty cool. She likes Hawaii, huh?" And I said, "How do you know that?" And he said, "Mom, you know me, I've been on social media a long time." And he said, "This lady got some good juju. You can tell her whatever you want to tell her." And I said, "Oh, okay." Are you
And I
sure?
love shaved ice.
He said she loves Hawaii, mom. Go ahead, So the man was Clyde Ikau, and he was an amazing person all the way until he passed. And the strongest man I've ever known in my entire life. No meds, not no meds, not even Tylenol he wanted until death. And he said, I am not in pain until he could no longer talk. And then he continued to mouth it and he chanted it to himself, just like he did with the big waves. So I learned a lot about him, and we became very good friends in the last several years. And I can thank the pandemic. That's one silver lining from the pandemic that I am so grateful for, because we ran a business together. We took care of our son, who was getting out of rehab himself. He is also a professional surfer, and he gave his dad everything the father wanted, which was the final thing was not after getting sober, after, changing his life and doing everything, was to surf in the Eddie Aikau event in this that happened just this last December in honor of Uncle Eddie. And Clyde was blessed with the fact that Ha'a was one of the, he wasn't recognized for hardly any of it, sadly. But and that's a political thing with Hollywood at sea, like it's a book I have in the queue that I will write later, and you'll know all about it, and we can talk all about that later. But his father, I sat next to his father in the booth now, in the booth, drones flying everywhere. Um, just a crazy moment. And he walked up and down those stairs by himself.
Mm.
Like he was on his deathbed then. And when I offered to help him, no. He said, you walk in the front of me and you just hang on because I'm behind you. And if you need to, do what we need to do, just make sure you're hanging on. And I followed his lead and he walked up and down. And these are flights of narrow, deep stairs. So he could see his son ride all the way to his son road
Wow.
that day with binoculars. The hair stands up all over my body because that was his dream. That was his dream, just to see that. And it came true. It came true in all the ways. Like, it never happens in December. It always happens in January or February when
Mm,
it does happen, right? The Bay calls the day. It's not a timed event.
right.
And and Clyde told me that he prayed and called out to his brother Eddie. Eddie would go, Eddie Aikau, the famous Eddie Aikau, legendary Eddie Aikau, who sacrificed his life for everyone in 1978 off that ship. I mean, not a ship, a sail. It was a sailboat that they used the stars to navigate, the Hokulea. And so Clyde has been honoring his brother with that event and everything else he's done since the death of his brother, since they haven't been able to find his brother at sea.
You know, again, those waves are incredible. Tell us a little bit about before we get into your story, but a little bit about the surf life. You told me some things that were eye opening to me. You just publicly said that your son had trouble
Drug abuse.
with
Yeah.
with drug abuse, but you said they are stoned out there in that water.
Do you know why? Because the surf community, sadly, and I'm not afraid to say this because Clyde and I had deep conversations about this. And he said, it is like Hollywood. When I asked him and told him, God, it's like Hollywood. Like, it's evil. It's crazy. It's got all the eating disorders. He goes, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Everyone wants, he said, a surfer has, this is the truth now. And I didn't understand it when he told me, a surfer in his career aiming for to be a pro has 5 years, 5 years of that time frame in their life, whether girl, male, female, where they're in that physique and that shape, he said, physical shape to be at their best. And if they're not at the right place, the right time, the photographer and everything, you're out. You're out. Just like how in Hollywood, right? You got to know the right people, the right time, the right place. Most of them, and I don't give a shit. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to swear.
That's okay.
Being my authentic self. I don't care who's listening. I'm not here for political reasons. They have eating disorders. They throw up. Worse than girls. Because why? April, they want the V. You know that V you see?
Oh
The,
wow.
the, the, it is crazy, crazy that grown men are literally in the bathroom after they eat at an event to get the V.
Wow.
And they
And
become
what I
obsessed.
what I saw is when I can visualize or maybe conceptualize why they would want to transform or transcend themselves through drugs, because you become one with the ocean. You are the ocean. You are a merman or a mermaid.
Does help them connect, is what I heard. I heard that LSD helps them connect, the mushroom.
LSD? I thought it
Yep, and
was a little
mushrooms.
weed and all that.
I heard mushrooms. I heard the ketamine drug that gets, doled out now, prescribed to people. Marijuana, yeah, that's I mean that's,
Oh,
of the earth, right? And so are mushrooms, I would guess. I mean, I would imagine, right? And no, but they a lot of them like being high because one, they are internally, they're a little, I mean, think about it. It's an eight, some of them, I mean, if you're talking about the big waves, those are 80-foot waves. That's the height of a coconut tree. And they're coming off. And I asked my son, what does it feel like when you're stepping down and looking? And he said, it is a split second of, oh my gosh, Lord, please make it good. Make it good, whatever way it turns out. I'm coming over. And it's like your heart is dropping from a roller coaster ride and you're coming down quick. And then but then at the same time, you're high. You're getting the most high you've ever felt, just like snowboarding, where they say that
exactly.
it's like the endless, but he said, they say it's magical.
Wow. So how
Absolutely
did you
magical.
find yourself in the place of drug abuse and self-harm?
Well, my mother was a single parent And she left my father, who was he's gone. At that time, he was a raging alcoholic when he would drink. And she couldn't have all the kids and starving and dealing with all the drama. And so she gave us, like, literally, I was a baby at the time and she left. And so I was a latchkey child, right? Home alone to make decisions, to learn how to cook and everything. No one teaching me anything, including homework. And I have it was diagnosed during the pandemic, but I have a severe case of ADHD, right? I mean, it's apparent, right? I keep myself focused. It's self-managed, right? And being alone like that and making your own decisions and knowing in your gut what's right and going against your own intuition, which is something I highly advise against, right? Um, but at the time, there was no guidance except siblings who were also on drugs. And so to answer your question, if you're being babysat and the people who are entrusted to babysit me, and you see them snorting piles of cocaine, you're going to say to yourself, it must not be that bad because they were entrusted to babysit me. But then I was always told to keep my big mouth shut because obviously they'd get in trouble. But my mother didn't have a choice. She had to work a job to bring home money to feed us. And at the time, Ronald Reagan became president. And my mother said that is why she never voted, not to get into politics, but what she understood was he took everything away. And so she had to have less money. And it, we had a hard time. Like, she was trying to pass off powdered milk. And so to be honest with you, I got stoned. I got stoned to not be aware of the fact that we were poverty stricken. And I felt better being in a different mind frame so that I didn't feel embarrassed when I went to school and I saw other girls with, different shoes on every week, or, all the Japanese, Asian girls in school with all the different makeup and whatnot. Like, we were poverty stricken.
So after you went through that, drugs, then you had to support your habit. What happened?
Well, then you had to do things to support it, like sell it or make deals. And so because I felt guilty selling it and I wasn't really wanting to sell it and kill people and put it on the street because I do have a conscience, I maneuvered and I did these facilitating things, which later on in my life, I flipped it and used it to facilitate other things and clients and concierge work and whatnot. But I practiced that and I got paid to put people together. That's how I got busted.
Mm.
I put together a massive drug deal, and I was going to get paid so I could pay rent for 2 months to another drug guy that was going through a divorce. And I wanted to settle down because I was tired of living on the street and having to move all the time and live. There's different homeless levels of homeless. And it's no better or worse or whatever. Sometimes it's more evil when you're in the elevated state because you have to do other things to get the drugs, right? Put yourself in harm's way, which is how I got raped a couple of times because I wasn't with good people. So to answer your question, you maneuver, you deal, you hang out with people. Oh, and I was also like a personal assistant to drug dealers so that I didn't have to have sex with them. I would just handle all their affairs and be like an executive assistant for a scumbag drug dealer who would fill my habit. And I maneuvered. No
Wow.
one put me out there now. My mother always made sure I had nice clothes of what she could afford, and I had decent food and always encouraged me not to overeat. And of course, I'm an emotional eater and I have hypoglycemia and I always wanted to eat. And she felt like she could never satisfy me or satiate me because I had such a great appetite, which is another reason why I ran away. Because I had started to develop an eating disorder and I was tired of someone telling me my ass was getting big and that, we were poor and I couldn't have a second helping because we didn't have a second helping. So I ran away and gave myself my own elevated life and traveled the world and traveled the United States and paid for everything like that with maneuvering all day long, every day. Every day was a new day,
So
April.
it's all about the negotiation and the art of the deal,
And knowing your intuition. So if I felt I was in danger and the vibe, I would remove myself and get out of it. And
Mm.
the other day we encountered that. How does it help you in modern day? Okay, I'll give you a perfect example. The other day, my son having a meltdown, understandably so. His father's on his deathbed, right? He's dropping me off at the beach while he goes and sees his father. Why? Because it's a long story, separate interview on that one. He's leaving me. He says, "Hey, where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to go get water. And you're going to drive in this direction to see dad like you always do." He goes, "Get in the car. I'll take you." I said, "You don't have to take me. I got this." He said, "There's a weird guy in the corner." I said, "I already spotted him. I know what to do." So instead of walking into the fire, knowing that that guy's going to ask me for money or whatever, I walked into the place opposite where I knew I'd be shrouded and protected and bought a plate lunch and got me water and used the bathroom, washed my hands. And those are the kinds of things that I do. You have to use your intuition and know where you're at and what's going on, no matter where you're at, so that you can almost anticipate the danger, the good, or whatever, and remove yourself so that you're not there anymore.
Well, you didn't do that in certain situations because you got so frustrated and overwhelmed that you tried to self harm.
I did do that.
You
The
told me one
suicide.
story. I don't know if you want to share that,
Oh,
but
I don't mind. I don't mind
but,
because I'm
but
here.
you told me literally blew my wig back. I could not believe. Now people have told me some stories. Would you share that with with our
I
audience?
will. I will. I was at a house called this project. It was the projects in Hawaii, if there are such a thing, and there are. And it's called Halava housing. And I was in there with some people and I got ripped off, which happened often because I entrusted people and they weren't good. And I just did it maneuvering, right? So I got robbed again. And I had just lost permanent custody of my son, who is in the room taking a nap right now, who I never thought I'd ever see. And they told me I'd never see him because I was a scumbag. And so because I left my child at the hospital, I felt like that was an epic failure. And I told myself, in a black and white sweater, looked like a piece of carpet. What was I thinking? But I guess I was thinking because I did it. And I had black pants on. And at night, you're not going to see anything like that. But there was the white, and it looked like a shag carpet. And I laid down after I left the housing in the middle of the night, like at 1 in the morning. And it was a busy freeway. And everyone knows where this is because it's the viaduct to the airport. And there's always semi trucks, cars going like 80 miles an hour, 65 miles an hour. And I went into the middle of this intersection and I laid down and I said, "Lord, take me away." Whether it's the Lord, the devil, Lord, take me away. I've done things that have been unsavory, that are bad. I'm a horrible person. I epically failed and left my child at the hospital. And I laid there and no car came, not one semi, not one vehicle, except these boys who were getting stoned or high, whatever they were up late at night, up to no good, but they were like decent people. Thank you, Jesus. And they came and they were yelling, "Wow, look at that carpet, look at that rug." And they pulled up and they said, "That's a person, that's a girl over there." And they dragged me, threw me in the vehicle. And I was like, "Oh my God, am I going to get gang raped now? And I can't even get killed?" Like, oh, holy crap. But it wasn't. And I let it go because they were good vibers. I could hear them talking and I hadn't slept in days, and they let me shower. They fed me a couple of times. I fell asleep a couple of times. They didn't touch me at all. They played video games. Back then it was like Atari. Um, and they saved me. And they asked me, why would I want to do something like that? I looked like I came from a good family. I had all my teeth. My skin was good. I didn't look like a troublemaker. And I told them what I did. I left my baby in the hospital and I felt like shit.
So you're
And
not
they were
just the mother of one, you're the mother of four.
four, four, yeah, four.
So what is the you want to share the dynamics among all four?
Yeah.
Is it
So I
a challenge?
had, pardon me?
Is it a challenge?
No, I have contact with only the one that I left at the hospital out of the three. And in the book, I know it sounds gnarly and off-putting, but I call them the children of the corn with a K. Not trying to pull from the book, but kind of pulling from the book because the older two, unfortunately and sadly, it hasn't quite worked out with them. Not quite. It hasn't worked out. And so the oldest one is I was 20 years old, so I always count back 20. So he's 35 in June. And then she, the daughter, is 1 year younger. And she is almost, maybe almost actually a little more than that. and she was born in 92. I stopped counting because we don't have any contact anymore. So she and I both went through quite a bit during the pandemic, and I am going to write about that. I have all the chapters mapped out, and she's a huge part of that story. And so I don't have contact with the oldest one, her. And yeah, what the oldest one said he wanted to murder me one night in a rage. I have the message. I don't know why I save it. It's so morbid.
Mm.
But because of that, I can't allow him to come near my family or be near me because he's already threatened to kill me. And that was a serious, and he threatened to kill everyone else.
Were you able to raise those other children at all? Were they ever in
I
your?
raised the oldest one until he was 2.5 in my care. And then I had to give him up because we were in danger because and that's in the book in chapters 9 and 10. It's really awful. And it's a trigger warning for people. If you buy the Paradise edition, even in the other East Coast version, the adult version, it's meant for, you have all the trigger warnings that the publisher, the first publisher I had me put that in there. But 2.5 to 3, and then 6 months for the girl. And then I had relatives take them. And at the time, the way that they ran the state agency here for child protective, they said if you didn't have a man and a male and a female in the house, as a mother and a father, and enough square footage, and someone home more of the time, then they couldn't stay together. And then
Wow.
they wouldn't let my father my father who wanted to adopt them and to keep them together. And even my auntie wanted to do it. They wouldn't let it go down. So they had to be all separated, which is never a good idea when you have siblings. You should never
A lot of
separate.
women, they struggle with that. That they may have to give their children up. But what is the alternative? You don't know what you don't know.
And you have to
Yes.
think of the children
And you
because the
have to think of
children
the
are more
children, and you
important than
don't know
yourself.
what they're going to go through. And so I just call out to foster parents. The God is
Yep.
watching you. My aunt was a foster parent. She raised over 50 children. Some
Wow.
went off to college, some became single parents, but they all loved her. Because when you take that in, you're taking on a lot. And you don't know what the mother has been through. All that you've been through, I can't see you lugging two, three kids along, trying to maneuver, uh, having
I
ADHD.
I
Uh,
did it though. I did do it. I did do it until they took them away. They always, all my children, you can ask anyone on the street that knew me then, that even my family, they were always clean, bathed, fed, nourished, vaccinations, whether I believed in them or not, vaccinated, educated. Not that I'm not trying to defend. I'm saying I was a good parent. And yeah, I got into the drugs, and part of that was numbing myself because I was heavily abused by the two middle children. His the man I call the man of the corn
mm, mm,
in the
mm.
book.
So let's fast forward the books. Wow. Did you keep journals? Is this embedded in your memory?
It's embedded in my memory really well, actually. I'm grateful for that. Yeah. And I wrote it over 4 years, but then I wrapped it up over a weekend. I don't know how I did that either. I wrote the East Coast version in a weekend, and then it went to a publisher because and now I do all my own editing, publishing, all that separate conversation. But at that time, I had advisors, and I learned, and I'm like, oh, I can do all this myself. But at the time, I had advisors, and that's who gave me about the trigger warning and everything else. And they were like, wait a minute, you rewrote this whole thing and put it all together in 4 days, like three and a half days,
Yeah,
day and night on the
but
computer.
they ripped you off. Tell us about that too.
Which one? The which
The about the book proposal, going to screenplay.
oh, okay.
Brains,
Yep.
I want you to hear this too. People will steal your intellectual property and call it their own.
Yeah, we have a situation where, and of course, this happened on the street like all the time, right? And I had a writer from Netflix and yeah, and from Showtime. I'm not going to say his name, but he spoke to me in Hollywood and he said, I want you to realize that you're dealing with people far worse than the sharks you dealt with on the street. And I said, okay. And he said, I don't care who tells you what. I don't care who your own people will turn on you. Okay. And he said, you've entered a realm of evil. And I was like, he said, I'm not trying to bust your balloon. I'm not trying to burst your bubble. I'm letting you know, honey, the sharks in suits are far more dangerous and scary than those mother effers on the street. And battle up, put your battle gear on because get ready to roll. He told me this in they call that the Desney claim in Hollywood, it turns out. And if you don't have a hotshot litigation attorney and pay them $5,000 to send a letter to scare the other side, then you don't stand a chance. And I've also been told, well, let them make the movie, let them spend all their money, and then shut them down with a cease and desist. And then I've heard, leave it alone because karma's going to get them. And the real story, and maybe I don't want to work with those people. I don't want to work with them now because of what happened. And not even giving me even a rejection letter would have been nice to go F myself, or here's other people you might want to work with which are more who are more in line with your story. None of that. So instead, they did what happens in Hollywood all the time. The sharks in the suits have the money, they take the story, the idea, they say what they say, and then now they have what Phil Goldfine and I were going to do. So it's okay because we can still make our show and it can still go to the screen, right? LA Tribune. I didn't win bestseller from the LA Tribune with like a high ranking report and get told by even the president of that company, hey, like, wow, that's a high score to get in all those different categories for this first time book.
Mm-hmm.
Because,
Well, talk
even
a
though,
little bit about what's inside the pages of the book.
well, it goes from conception, so it does touch upon the ancestors, where I've come from, right? And I will be writing a prequel about those stories later on. But it starts there, and it takes you through my life briefly as a child to show that I was once a normal person that didn't use drugs and didn't have the darkness in me, right? And then it gets into all of that and documents all of that and the survival through all of that. And then it leads into how it can blossom into something good, right? With, ending at that time of that chat, of that book, of that volume, into my real estate career when I was heavy into it. And when I met Bob Proctor, who pretty much has saved my life, I think, countless times since 2015.
Did you want to share with us a little excerpt from one of the books?
Yes. So one of my favorite chapters, April, is SWAT Team Sally. And I gave it that title, and I used to joke about it because I was once SWAT Team Sally. So but that's where the change actually occurred, that I got taken down by they called them the alcohol fire. I didn't even have any firearms, but they had the DEA, they had helicopters. Jeez. Okay, so let's
You're a
look.
straight gangster. I ain't mad at you, girl. You got your G card. I mean, you know, you
I
gonna do
mean,
what you gotta do it big.
it pretty much was yeah. I got the book thrown at me and I told the truth and I didn't ask for the lawyer, and I did everything that I was schooled not to ever do. And it was almost like God was talking to me and telling me, uh, it's done. So Bruce, my brother in real life, his character is Brad in the book, in the story with Wise Marie. One night, Brad called me through the pager. Back then we had pagers, right? And I called him back from a payphone that was a vetted one that he would instruct me to use in the city. He was so fucking paranoid and careful, something I lacked at that point. He was friends with all kinds of cops from working on the movie sets and being in the union, IATSE, and Teamsters, along with my brother Peter and father. We all hung out at the movie set. My brother Peter sold coke to all the stars and crew on the set and got everyone hooked on the blue Peruvian flake. Boy, it was awful. Brad was so strung out on a movie set and couldn't stand the director, so he picked him up off the ground and choked him nearly to death. He wasn't a violent person, at least to me, but I heard stories from his ex-girlfriends years later, and they said that he was one of those guys that went crazy. I guess I could see that. But now that he was in my life and I was in his again, he felt protected. He asked me to meet him in a nightclub in Waikiki toward the back, order a drink, act like I was cruising there and wanting to dance and play the part. I was like, really? He said, you better listen and just meet me there. So I got there and followed his directions. He showed up all incognito in black and acted like he ran into me there by coincidence. I was like, come on, bro. You must be smoking the good shit. He told me my friend, the undercover, said you need to stop hanging out with B. B like B. We use him as an initial. He further stated that I was going to be part of the bust, as they were following him daily and knew I was a close friend for years and part of the entourage. He gave me the big brother warning, as a narc told him to tell me to stay away no matter what and to lay low for a long time to let the heat die down. Do you think I listened? Of course not. I kept being a part of B's group and helping him do deals so I could pay for the rent and save up for an apartment in town. I wanted out of the city and the normal places I hung out. Everyone made fun of me and said I was nuts. I lived on the outskirts of the city and found the place with the divorcee. He rented me a room at the back of his house and said the hallway bathroom was mine, and he had his master bedroom. He had another room in the back that was a spare, as it was his kid's old room, who no longer came to the house for obvious reasons. I had use of the kitchen and I could park on the street. I loved that town as it was close to stores, restaurants, not like we ate out all that much, parks, a school, and other close conveniences where B would often stop by. I became stable and a friend rented a car for me long term. I was independent, driving and living on my own, what I always wanted for myself, not to be reliant on an abusive man. I was proud of myself, even though I was completely out of my mind and not thinking about consequences or reality. Do you want me to keep going or no?
Get to a pivotal point.
Okay. I had given up my kids as CPS would not help me, and I couldn't stay sober longer than 3 days by that point. And that was usually when I was sleeping. I was totally living on the edge, like the Aerosmith song. Totally wolo YOLO. And I didn't care if I died, as I had failed epically as a parent. I chose to be a wannabe entrepreneur, slinging deals so that I could have a stable place, help others, always helping others, and get caught because I didn't listen to Brad. Remember the movie Less Than Zero? That'd be me. Brad became distant and stopped coming over. He was afraid of losing his freedom, as I was so careless. I had a guy from the neighborhood who was my brother's and sister's classmate from high school. He came over to smoke dope and visit me at this house. He was an educated Hawaiian guy who loved to eat Italian food, smoke dope, get paranoid, and then run home to his parents' house in the hood, as he knew he was safe there. He brought over puttanesca, my favorite dish from the little place on the corner, and one night he told me, you need to build a trap door to the underneath of the house that has a tunnel into the ground that can't be sniffed out by the dogs. So I'm gonna go forward a little because these were warnings, right? This is all like people that came and said, what are you doing? What are you doing? Okay.
Now remember, Brains, she's only 5'2".
I'm 5'2" and I was
Did you
20.
pack a pistol?
No, never, never. I used to like to use things like bats and other things that I couldn't get. I didn't want to be because I was not a violent person.
Right,
I was
right.
unless I was messed with, and then of course I had to, yeah. So anyway, what happened? This is what happened. We're gonna get here. So I ended up making this deal, and I should not have done this deal. I was standing in a hallway, so let's take it from here. Yeah, let's take it from here because I'll leave this other part. So I'm standing in the hallway and I peeked outside because I heard shuffling and things outside of the house, and boom, the front door was knocked down by a battering ram. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I ran into the bathroom and screamed, laying on the floor with my hands up. A red-headed officer entered with a plexiglass shield, a helmet. I remember it clear as day. I don't even need to read this, and I could tell you, a handgun and a rod. He had a rod. I love those things, but he had the rod. I was nearly pissing in my pants, being in my pants. He told me to keep my hands up and to stay down. Stay down so no one gets hurt. He's screaming. Okay. I am like kicking and screaming with my face down on the bathroom floor. This is exactly how it's happening. I was fading into darkness, and all I could hear were Brad's warnings over and over again. I saw my entire life of only 26 years flash in front of my eyes in a split second. I was beyond remorseful, and I felt like I was going to have a heart attack from the crazy amount of anxiety I was feeling. Plus, I had smoked a whole bunch of meth prior to that. We were in a full-blown drug bust. The cops had knocked down the solid 36, it had a 36-inch solid door with like metal. They knocked it right off the hinges, and the whole frame, everything came off with an apparatus that knocked it off the hinges. I heard glass breaking and more screaming, plus the oh shits coming from my room. I ignored it as I thought I was really going to be shot by the red-haired burly narc detaining me in the bathroom. Keep your hands up. Okay, he's telling me this. I'm hearing this. It's going crazy. I got pulled off the ground, tossed into the couch next to the others. Our hands were zip tied. You know the zip ties that you use to zip tie things?
Yeah,
That's
I've
what they
seen them.
do. That's
Yeah.
what they use. And they do it so tight they cut your wrists. It's really, really bad. And then they tie you together so you can't all run away, and your feet are tied so you can't move. You have to ask for permission to go to the bathroom. They clip you and they retie you again. We were all almost hog tied, like literally.
Well, you are
It
very
was
fortunate you were even able to go to the bathroom because sometimes they make you use the bathroom right there, whichever end is coming out of.
no. Then the dogs came in, the helicopters came in, the dogs came in, the canine unit came in. They were ripping everything apart. Rice. I mean, this house got torn upside down. Um, there were quiet Japanese people standing outside staring. Like the Stones came to town. We were pale as ghosts, quiet and fucked. I had no idea zip ties immobilize you, but they sure do. I wrote that in the book. So, I mean, I could stop there, and just so you know, that was the pivotal point for me. Was it was Thanksgiving Eve, Wednesday. And what happens on Wednesday? Courts don't open until Monday. I had to remain in that. It was meant to be in all that it on in how it all happened. So it was on the news. My mother was warned by my aunt that they were getting ready for Thanksgiving. And here's Kimberly on the news, 10 o'clock news.
Oh.
And so my mom said, oh my God, I gave birth to a monster. And she was so embarrassed. And that's when it all started. And that's how my life changed. Was I was in there from Wednesday night, Thursday, when they tried to feed me a turkey dinner, and the meat was like a piece of toast. I went like that, and it went turned into dust, and I was like, I
Hmm.
couldn't eat. I was sick. I was coming down off the stuff. I was playing with the funhouse mirror because I was like, oh my God, I don't even have a real mirror. I didn't have any shoelaces. I lost everything. You lose everything. You don't get to choose how you get to dress to go to the jail, right? I had the most ugliest sweatshirt, I looked so terrible.
But
Like,
it's beyond the external look, it's the internal look, the
mhm,
reflection that you had of yourself. You had that time to stay there in solitude. You had that time to reflect. You had that time with God, as they say.
I
You had that
did.
come to Jesus meeting.
I
And it
did.
wasn't pleasant. And it wasn't pleasant. But you went, I've been watching again, one of my favorite shows is The Orange is the New Black. And I met the actual the author of it, and it was amazing because what she had told me was such inhumane things that happen. Like you can't have sanitation. So what do? I go to my friends at Procter and Gamble. I get all this women's hygiene stuff, pack it up, send it to our local prison here in San Diego. They return it. I said, why? Because they have to earn that in their commissary. I thought that was a basic right. So you are stripped of your dignity.
I went in, and I was lucky that they put me and felt pity. They took pity. The guards took pity on me because they took one look at me and went, where are we gonna put her?
Hmm.
And they were like, Mellow Shay, like perfect. And Mellow Shay, oh, shouldn't have said that name because that was the real name. But anyway, we're moving on. Mellow saved me. She had lipstick, brand new lipstick, so I didn't have to use her lipstick in case she thought I had herpes. Seriously, she was so classy. She had chocolate, she had cigarettes, and she had poems, and she had a personality and knew how to dance Tahitian. She was a white girl. and she knew how to dance Tahitian. And she said, welcome to my, welcome to my, welcome to my cell. And
Uh,
she said, I'm so grateful. Like I'm that I finally got someone with half a brain and like not some whatever real, weird, gross junkie. And she was a blessing. And they let me stay with her for a really long time. Then they move you up because you get too close and you become friends and they're afraid you're making
right.
real wine with the old fruit, stuff like that. Anyway, but that's what happened. And then I got a good lesson from a bank robber who drove the getaway car, a lady named Jeanette. She gave me some pearls of wisdom and told me, when you get rid of that chip on your shoulder that's like super big and there and like that's why you keep getting and running into the walls, she's like, save yourself, you're young enough. And she said, you want to end up like me and do jigsaw puzzles all day long for the rest of your life in a corner, huh, and deal with all these bitches and cunts that I don't want to deal with every day and eat this shitty food? You save yourself, stop what you're doing now and get rid of that chip on your shoulder. You just never know. God speaks to you in the strangest places and from the strangest, most unlikely people.
But he spoke to you to elevate you to where you are now. Let's kind of condense it and tell a little bit about what's going on now. You went into real estate, you have a non for profit, and you're pouring into others. Tell us a little bit about your experience. I know that you're transitioning out of the real estate, but how did you find that? Because that's a huge negotiating uh,
Huge,
opportunity and creates
huge. And I remained unlicensed through the whole tenure of that, right? The whole career of that, which started in 2002 with the first property we purchased through, obviously through a realtor and everything. But I just paid attention. I read contracts, I looked at how things were negotiated, and I figured it all out. And my husband and I were the ones that found every single place, except the one that we live in Aurora. That's the only one the realtor helped us with, and it was the 50th home in Colorado that we looked at. But anyway, how did we get into it? Well, on the real estate investing side, I went to the Bob Proctor seminar, and that changed my life. In 2015, I spent a weekend in LA, was invited, thought it was going to be this kooky old man talking about this movie with The Secret, and it wasn't. It was life-changing, life-shattering, and I became a real estate investor, and my husband and I took it to almost $8 million of value in real estate. And we just sold the last investment property. It closed on April 21st, and I am now morphing or have already morphed with the books, obviously in the author world. Then we wanted to go to cinema, but we are no longer dealing with property management or anything in that realm except primary residences and focusing on family. And it happened all in the succession it was supposed to, with even with the death. Like, we're done doing all the things that we set. It is amazing. It is amazing. That's all I have to say, is right here and now, living in the present and knowing that I got rid of all that real estate and what I was worried about in this crazy market, and that now I can focus on writing, I can focus on family. I can focus on keynote speaking to help the masses, because that's truly what I'd like to do, April, is not be full of myself and be whatever. There's gotta be tons of women, men, whomever, children who are suffering and don't know how they get out of the black hole that they're in.
right.
And they have it all within themselves. And anything's possible, as I say, AIP, and anyone can do it. And so from that, with the keynote speaking and the nonprofit, so really I call it my perfect trifecta right now of the things that I'd love to do to transition into the next life, right? Write, continue to write about this character, the Wise Marie, in both the children's group, age 4 to 8 category, as well as the adult books. Continue on with that story, and then write my career books, which are already in the hopper. And I've already written like 3/4 of a property management book, 101, for people who are thinking of getting into that type of realm, whether it's short-term, mid-term, long-term rentals. Okay. And I have people paying to be in that book with their like recommendations in that realm of work. And it's almost like a who's who kind of a book, where it's cross marketing, that kind of a purpose. So I have that in the hopper. And then, as I said, the keynote speaking, whether I need to go like Bob and start in the prisons, rehabs, because I used to do public speaking before in the rehab and motivate all the people. I'd come back as a graduate and people said it was life-changing, that they stuck with the program because of my speech. And if I can change someone's life just by opening my mouth and running my mouth, and somehow a nugget gets captured, amen. I saved
Well,
a life.
it's more than running your mouth. You got a testimony and a sacrifice. And I tell people all the time, to whom much is given, good, bad, or indifferent, much is required. And only the strong survive.
Yep.
So this life is not for chumps. You may have it sugar coated, but you got a life contract and a soul contract that you must fulfill.
Yep.
Everybody don't just stand up and say, "Hey, I will take it for what it's worth." I will take it for what it's worth. So what I
Mhm.
want to do is I want to find out how to get in contact with you and if there's any current offerings that you may have.
Sure. We are working on a guidebook that was recommended by the LA Tribune to pen to the Paradise Edition and to bridge between any other volume that I choose to write so that people can look and see and think of it as maybe a cheat sheet through navigating in tough times, kind of a thing, like not maybe a workbook even, right? And to use that and promote that in the keynote speaking. I can be found through thewisemarie.com. I'm obviously the real Wise Marie. Natasha Brune is my pen name, my trademark legal copyrighted pen name, natashabrune.com, same thing. Take you to the same website. And the children's website is different. It's in production, thewiseladybug.com, but I wouldn't worry too much. Everything's on the Amazon channel, right? The dashboard there, the author's page. You can find all my books there because that's really where, you know, it's an automated pilot thing. I know I have websites that, promote direct sales, but I'm not even looking for that. I really want to just have it out there because it's not just about the book. So it's about someone picking up the book that needed to read the book and it saved their life, like those guys did in that car when they thought I was a piece of carpet. Maybe something in here, an excerpt, a sentence can save someone's life. Never know, right? So
That's
that's truly, yeah. So go ahead.
No, I said that's really a legacy, and that's
No,
something to be proud of. And I give you your flowers because it
I,
is a lot. It's a lot to contain with. It's a full
it
container.
is.
I told you, brains. It is a mini series, and you will
And
touch lives.
I want to give back through the Aloha Jigsaw Foundation. So the person who passed away last night, he's going to become an honorary board member, but and never not be a board member. But uh, he was the acquisitions director, and he was doing his best to uh, bring together, funds to help the orphan children from the fires on Maui. So there's a lot of crime and a lot of heartache and everything going on with Maui. But there's children who are not being led and taught because they got caught in the crossfire of parents getting divorced due to the fires, parents losing their jobs, parents seeing their parents abuse each other when they were never like that before. And it's really messed with this new generation of folks that I'd like to capture. And through the Aloha Jigsaw Foundation, we'd like to work lightly on that and not come in and try and, give housing. The government has taken care of all of that. We want to help with their mindset. And so
Mm.
I'd like to just keep that on a wrap just because, people steal ideas and whatnot and other things. And I just want to keep it tight. Not that I'm being
Well, you know
selfish, but
what?
yeah,
What is for you? You can't miss because it has your name all over it, and you have done an incredible job. You are a woman of resilience. You're strong. You ride or die. You got your G card. I ain't mad at you. And you have been able to come out, like you said, with all your teeth. People using meth and got all your teeth. Look at that, and they're pretty smile. And
I had an overcrowded mouth.
wow,
Thank you, Jesus.
and you now you have an angel that will follow you wherever you go as you ride the waves. Thank you so much, Kimberly, for being here on the Edge. Brains, go back, rewind this, share this with people that you know. This is inspirational. I've had a lot of women that have been in incarceration, but they've been able to come out and reinvent themselves. If you know somebody that has been down on their luck, don't count them out because you don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, you
It's
don't know.
what they have learned
Yeah,
and how they can help teach and educate you. Go
yeah.
here and sign up on the YouTube channel, on all of our social media platforms, because we want you to thrive. We want you to survive. Again, mahalo.
Mahalo.